Hey everybody, welcome back to Ready Steady Play. I'm here with
Ollie.
Ollie.
Anticlimactic.
Ollie, who you'll remember from Galaxy Trucker
Mm.
and our second video series, Kittens in a Blender. Is that number 2?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and a whole bunch more since then.
Yeah. Well, Rhino Hero?
Right now here, yeah, the Christmas specials.
Mhm.
He was here for the Christmas specials. You did, I think your most recent one was Buffy, wasn't it?
Yes.
No, that's not true because you were just here for Ethnos.
Oh, God, yeah. Time is a strange thing on the internet.
So, we're here. We're back together today to play Near and Far, which is the new adventure game from Red Raven Studios, designed by Ryan Laukat. And as far as I can tell, Red Raven Studios is mostly Ryan Laukat and members of his family. I really like their games. I really like the board games that come out of that studio. I mean, I've got a special soft spot for Above and Below, which I've got here. Hang on. Here we go. Above and Below. And this one is Near and Far, which is like a sequel to Above and Below. We're not going to have a repeat of Galaxy Trucker.
All the expansion boxes.
So I immediately backed this the minute I saw it on Kickstarter because I love these games. And I've got some of his others as well, like City of Iron and 8 Minute Empire, 8 Minute Legend. I've backed the second printing of Empire of the Stars. I'm getting the names right.
Fix it in editing.
I'll fix it in the edit. But there's a sort of a sense of joyful storytelling and depth in these games that I just really, really like. And I think it especially comes out in these games, which feature sort of a choose your own adventure story element as well. So this is Near and Far, and it's a game where we're going to take on the roles of characters in this fantasy world that Ryan's created, and we're going to sort of go around having adventures and going on little quests and sort of taking care of evil guys and
Or becoming them.
And we will. Well, what I like about it is it's a reputation tracker, not a morality tracker.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're good, you're evil. It's like you have a reputation for doing evil things.
Yeah.
Right?
We've heard things about you, none of them good.
Exactly.
They
So
might
it's,
not even be true.
it's sort of a reflection of the morality you chose for yourself, which is really neat. But before we get too much into the mechanics of the game, I'll just explain that this is the board. We've got, in true adventuring style, we've got our town here where we're going to stock up on resources and supplies we need for our adventure. And then we're going to go out into this, which is the Atlas, the World Atlas. And this is just full of different lands we can go to and visit. And they're all different. They all contain sort of different adventures. But, the mechanics stay sort of the same on most of the games. And but why are there so many? Well, because this game actually has 3 game modes. I say 3 because you can kind of, it kind of gives you some flexibility to change up how you want to play it. There is a campaign where you'll play through all of these maps in order, having sort of random adventures and random sort of things happening to you as you go through them, and you'll be leveling up your character. And you'll have a character sheet like this one here, and you'll be leveling up your character as you go through the adventures, and waiting till you get to the Lost Ruins at the end of the world, where you'll take on some bosses who only appear in the campaign mode. And here's the Last Ruins, and here are the bosses. We've got the Red King, we've got Zag the Treasure Hunter, the Ivory Queen, and Captain Shreya. And these bosses will actually, you'll only use 2 of them if there's fewer than 4 players. But that's the climax of the campaign mode, which is sort of really something that you can do with this game if you love it and you want to sit down with your friends and play it regularly over a course of evenings. Because in order to get to these bosses, you have to go on 10. You have to play 10 games.
Yeah.
So that's. I mean, I'm lucky to get a game to the table 10 times in a year. I feel, because there's so many games to play.
Yeah.
There's so few game nights.
Not to mention the fact that it's a continuous campaign, so once you've picked your character, that's you as the same person, same thing for 11 games.
To be fair, in the campaign mode, the characters don't actually influence the adventures you have or the skills you can acquire or anything like that. The only but then that brings us to the second game mode, which is character story mode. And in character story mode, you'll actually just play through 2 of these maps with your characters, following, instead of random adventures from the adventure book, you'll be following sort of a set story arc, a narrative, which has branches based on the choices you make. And that's when these characters that you can play as, and there's, I think, 8 included in the box, but yeah. So that's when these different characters that you can play as will follow different stories and different branches of those stories as you play through these 2 maps. And then you will then go to the end and play the final map with the bosses again, but with the sort of flavor of these specific stories that you've been following. So those are 2 game modes that are really intriguing and quite unique, I feel, sort of in terms of...
Looks like they'd be a lot of fun to play.
Exactly. But then if you're not... Maybe you don't have the time to go through and do all of that, or you don't want to maybe commit to doing that, or maybe you're already doing it with your friends and you want to just get the game out for a quick run through with just some buddies that showed up. So you've also got this deck of adventure cards here, and these are sort of much less written adventures that kind of substitute in for the other adventures you might have. So here we've got the Meteor Shrine, and you've got an option to pray or pillage at the shrine and get different rewards based on what you did. So the game has a ton of replayability.
Yeah, it's good to see a game where they've quite clearly thought ahead as, okay, after they've played this 1, maybe 2 times, what's going to bring them back to it? And there's 3 game modes, and even when you do a game mode, there's ways of changing that up as well. So you do one game where there's 3 or 4 of you, you do the full 11 campaigns. You do one where there's 5 of you and you're just doing the shorter character version, and you can then randomize it even further, which is it's quite refreshing for a board game.
There's a lot of different controls that allow you to control the length of the game and sort of how much time it will take as well. So if you want a slightly more meaty experience, or if you want to run through it really quickly, you can control that as well. So that's really cool. So having explained that, let's talk about the sort of the core mechanics of the game, and then we'll get into explaining a bit more about how the adventure book runs. And this is the Kickstarter version of the game, but there's not really a whole lot you get in the Kickstarter that you don't get in the retail box. Really, the only difference is that I have these shiny tokens instead of these non-shiny, not core set tokens. As you can see, I've got the metal coins and the plastic gems.
No, they're real gems. I can tell.
Genuine rubies. If you need any rubies, contact me. I need to fund my channel.
Apparently, they're really cheap.
Budget rubies. So, I'll get rid of those. We won't need them. So actually, this is quite neat as well. I love this. If you open up the atlas to the first map here, you can see that there is, in fact, above and below on this map. Which I really like. I think that's really cool.
It's a good little tie-in because clearly the game's a continuation. So just a little reference to it.
I mean, I guess the idea is that in Above and Below, you're building the town, you're finding a new town for your people, and then in Near and Far, now we're going out setting off on adventures from the town.
We built the town in the last game, and now it's time for people to go out and have their quests.
So how do we win quests and adventures? I mean, that's kind of a strange concept. The way you win, actually, is by acquiring the most journey points. So, yes, you win by having the most points. But the way in which these points are calculated is is through many different things. And so it's kind of like an abstract quantification of how exciting your adventures have been and what you've accomplished, and whether you'll go down as sort of a hero sung about in myths and legends, or whether you had an impact on the world, or whether you were just kind of like some dude and the people forgot about you and you're just kind of like, man.
Yeah. I mean, the idea is to be of such renown that people will talk about your journey with excitement for years to come. Or you could completely fluff it and people forget who you are by Tuesday.
Exactly. You don't want to be the guy who got forgotten about by Tuesday. So the journey points can come from sort of elements of the player board. They can come from adventuring elements. And they the advanced town board as well. There's no victory points in the town board on the basic side. We've got the advanced side set up. The only difference is the reputation tracker, which we'll get to later. But you've got you can as an adventurer you can get points for sort of exploring the map and establishing trade routes. You can get points for taking care of threats and evil things in the village. You can get points for acquiring treasure, and you can get points for discovering ancient and mythical artifacts. And that's sort of the first thing that you'll do. Because what we're going to do, actually, is we're going to be playing the arcade mode. But what we'll do is, because it's slightly better for the channel and for you guys at home to watch, I think, rather than using the arcade mode cards I showed you, we're just going to read the adventures from the adventure book.
Kind of a little mix.
Yeah, so it's sort of like we're playing one section of the campaign, but we don't have pre-established characters. And that's okay, because you don't need to level your characters up to continue through this book. It's just that as you go through the book, in a campaign you'll be acquiring points and totaling your points at the end of every one, and whoever has the most points at the end of all of the 10 games is the overall winner.
Yeah.
So we're only playing one game, and so we don't need to... leveling up just enables you to get even more points.
Yeah.
And we don't, because we're both starting on the same level, which is 0, nobody's, totally unknowns.
Maybe -1.
-1. So less than unknown. Actively avoiding the spotlight, trying to change our lives. So that just means that it doesn't really matter whether or not what level we are. We can play. We could even go to the very last map and play that one, and just not play with the bosses. And that's cool because all the maps have different adventures. There's 165 adventures, and they're all associated with. Actually, that's not true. There's the first map, which is kind of like a tutorial map, plus 165 adventures in the main book as well.
Yeah.
And the adventures are tied to specific spaces, so you can learn them as you go through the game. But then, like we said before, if you can remember all of that, if you play often enough that you've memorized all the adventures and where they are, then and that would be a pretty good feat. You can always just substitute them in with the randomized random encounter cards. And they have less text on them, so they're less flavorful. But then, you could make a game out of sort of improvising a little adventure, something like that.
It's quite easy for you to add in and fill in the blanks of any situation. We've read a few of them just while we were looking through it, and it's quite open-ended. You can make your character be whoever you want them to be, and in some situations you might go, well, I do this because of my character's this kind of person, or because I want this to happen. But you can also just do it to add to the story.
Exactly right. So I've explained a little bit about how we get points, adventuring. No, actually, you don't get points for quests, and that's important to note. But we'll get to that later. But establishing trade routes, taking care of enemies, acquiring epic artifacts, all that kind of stuff. So how does that happen? Well, there's 2 decks actually of epic artifacts, and these are things that we'll start with a hand of epic artifacts, basic cards here, and advanced cards here, and the epic artifacts are worth points if you can construct them, but they're also worth negative points at the end. So each one has a different points value on it, but no matter which one they are, you'll get -1 point if you hold them at the end of the game. You have a maximum hand size of 5 of them, and you'll start the game with 5, but before the game begins you can actually discard as many of them as you want. So there is sort of an incentive, I suppose, to not having all 5 in hand at the beginning of the game.
Yeah. And it's also quite cool that the bonuses they're very, very good generally, but the requirements to getting them, you only need them when you're actually buying it. So if it costs you so much food, so much renown, so many gems, you only need that when you get it. So it's not an upkeep or a tax. It's this is your entry cost. Once it's yours, which is quite good, I think. And it means that you're not. There's a lot of resource games where once you start going down a path, you are stuck on that path. Whereas with this, you can be like, oh, I need to get this to finish this artifact, and then I can just veer off wildly. But it's quite funny because we found that some of the artifacts require your renown or morality to be one way or the other. So you might find yourself going, I've got a hand of artifacts that require me to be quite evil and quite ill thought of. So if I want to score any points for those, I'm going to have to go that way. But once you've got them, you can then turn around and redeem your character and suddenly go, I'm going to be nice again, because why not? Or you could stay being evil and just roll with it.
Absolutely. So let's take a quick look at an example of a basic card here. I actually haven't set this up, so I don't know what this is. A flintlock pistol. That's actually pretty cool.
Wow.
So this gives you +2 to rolls during duels, and we'll explain what duels are later. But this one has a cost of 4 coins, so you'd spend 4 coins. It's also got a cost of -1 reputation, which means you'd have to at least have one like sort of negative reputation, which means like sort of one slightly evil act or slightly dirty act that you've done.
Underhanded, a little bit sneaky.
Mm-hmm. So if you'd been a bit sneaky and you were on a -1, or worse, you could be completely evil and a total douchebag. And then you could build this flintlock pistol. And that would get you 3 journey points. This map symbol here is the symbol for journey points, and that says 3 in it. So if you had that, you would just put that down on your player board over here, and that would be yours now, and it would give you +2 to all duel rolls, and at the end of the game, you get 3 points for that.
Yeah, because it's only the incomplete ones that cost you. So it's in your best interest to finish them.
If you later redeemed yourself and your reputation increased after you saved a village, or maybe you baked a crazy good cake. The point is that
that is an odd scale of like saved a village. I baked you a cake.
You never know. Cakes can go a long way, especially with me. But if you improve your reputation, as Ollie said, that was a static sort of state when you purchased the item, so you don't lose the flintlock pistol just because you're good now. Let's have a look at an advanced item. What have we got here? Wow. Unearthed treaty.
Ooh.
+1 journey point at game end per nomad you've recruited. Well, that's pretty special. So you can see already that this would sort of help define how you might want to play the game.
Yeah.
There's 4 factions in the game, and I'll get into that later, but the nomads are one of the factions, and this is actually their faction banner here. And what this means is that in order to make this, you need to pay 3 coins, you need to pay 4 gems and 3 bread, but you also need to possess a nomad faction banner, which are these tokens here, and you get those almost exclusively from going on quests, which we'll get to later to explain the quests, but you can also trade things for them. So you could actually trade other faction banners or food or coins for those as well.
That one actually is pretty damn good.
That's pretty cool, and it's worth 8 journey points. That's loads. But these will be shuffled, and we'll draw more later, which is a shame, actually, because I quite like those top cards. They're quite interesting.
Yeah, but the thing about it is it's a draft, so you don't if you have four great ones in your hand, you're not going to get all of them.
Yep. So at the beginning of the game, we'll deal 4 basic and 2 advanced to each of us. Then we'll play a quick draft with the 4 basic cards. I'll keep one. I'll give my 3 to Ollie. He'll do the same. We'll keep alternating until we both have 4 cards, 2 from each of the hands we were dealt at the beginning.
Yeah.
We'll also have 2 advanced artifact cards like that Unearthed Treaty. And once we've done the draft of the basics, we then choose one of the advanced ones we've got to keep and discard the other. And all of the discards are face up, so people can see what we've been. Although I don't know if that will help you. And once we've got our hands of artifacts cards, we're ready to start adventuring. All of the adventures start in the town board. So let's explain how the town board works. In the town board, there are 7 buildings. 7 buildings, right? I didn't fuck that up. Well, 8 if you include the jail, but you might know.
Yeah.
And this is the advanced town board. There's very few differences between the advanced and the basic version, but we'll just talk about the advanced one because that's the one we're going to be using in the playthrough.
Yes.
So we've also got this man here. He's guarding the town hall, and he'll duel us if we try to go there. And again, I'll explain how we get to dueling later. But that he's only present in a 2-player game. If you're playing with 3 or 4, he wouldn't be there. So the first thing you can do is go to the town hall, which is here. And in the town hall, you've got options of 3 actions that you can do. You've got the prices of all of the things in the game. So you've got food, which kind of acts like a currency. You've got money, which is a currency. And gems, which is another kind of currency, really. And they're worth 1, 2, and 2.
Just like real life.
And then you've got the faction banners here. So you've got the outlaws, the lizard folk, the nomads, and the mystics. And their banner values there as well. So people obviously don't really care about being an outlaw. But the mystics are highly prized because they're wizards and can, do cool magic for you.
To be fair, I don't think many people will be proud of saying, "Look, I support outlaws," while in the town that outlawed them.
We've also got this 5 for 1. And what this is the first action you can do in the town hall. And what that means is you can essentially do any kind of sort of equivalency trade of these goods, 5 for 1 or 1 for 5. So I could trade, for example, 5 food for a lizard folk banner. Or I could trade a mystic banner for 3 coins and a food. That's just a straight up trade, numerical, but you can never go over 5. So I couldn't trade 7 food for a mystic banner. Or a mystic banner for 7 food. That would be illegal. So that's the first thing you can do. The second thing you can do is discard an artifact card. Like I said, they're worth -1 at the end of the game. And if you want to get them out of your hand, because the maximum hand size is 5, and if you've got 5 cards in your hand and you want to start getting rid of them because you're not going to make them, then this is the only way to do it. Furthermore, if you want to make space for more artifacts, because you can pick more up, the only way to do that is by either making them or by bidding them here. So, it's a bit of a tough choice you have to make about what you keep.
I mean, it could be the case of you start off with your 5 and you think, oh, this is going to be really easy to make, and partway through the game you've made none of them, and you realise that it just isn't going to work.
And they're just not what you want either.
You don't want to have the negative points, so you'll discard a couple of the ones you just know you're not going to build, you're not going to finish them, and then maybe you'll pick something up later on and go, oh, this is really, really simple, easy victory points.
Exactly right. So then we've got here that's the discard artifact card, and this just allows you to trade any number of coins and gems, as many as you want for reputation, either plus or minus.
I love this. This for me is a fantastic thing. I'm giving you money and gems, but tell everyone I'm a douche.
Well, it's not a douche. Tell everyone I'm fearsome and shouldn't be meddled with.
Again, you're paying someone to speak badly of you. I mean, yes, you might be feared, but you're also kind of going to be a bit hated.
Slander me!
Yeah, here's money. Slander me publicly in this town.
Wait, slander is written word, right?
That's libel.
Oh, that's libel. Yeah, I always got those two mixed up.
Had to think then.
So that's how that works. Now, it's important to note that at the end of the game, you'll total all your coins and gems into one number, and then you get 1 journey point for every 2. So if I have 2 coins and 2 gems, or 3 coins and a gem, that's 2 journey points at the end of the game. So they do have a value at the end, and so I might not want to spend them on the reputation. It depends if it's worth something to me. And we'll get to reputation, a bit more about reputation in just a minute. So here's the saloon. And the saloon is where we recruit people to come on our adventures with us. And it's very important to have people to come on your adventures with us. So here we've got a big bag of adventurers who are going to come with us.
Nice little random bag.
Yeah, the bag comes with the game.
No, but it's a bag of randomness.
Bag of randomness. So there's 5 adventurers in the saloon at any given time, so let's get them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's too many. I can count. So here we go. We've got this hog folk. Here's a lizard folk. Lizard man. No, I've not got enough. Here's some kind of crazy mystic person who's not a mystic at all, who's a nomad.
I've just realised that there are walking pigmen, and one of the bits of food is bacon.
Maybe it's horse bacon. Oh, here's an epic lizard folk warrior. That guy's awesome. Look at him. He's really cool. So here are the adventurers you can hire. Now these adventurers will give you different stats. They've got hearts on them, and I'll explain what the hearts do in more detail a bit later on. But they've also got swords, which add to your combat bonus.
Yep.
They've got hands, which add to your skill bonus, and they've got faction allegiance down in the bottom left, which is important later, relating to those chieftains actually above them. We'll talk about that a bit more in detail a bit later. And then you've got costs on the bottom right as well. And they've also, some of them have got eyeballs under the hearts. Those are search icons, and those are also important. So what do all these things mean? Well, we'll talk about them as they come up in the game. But first off, I'm just going to show you over here on my player board. So this is the active party on my player board. Now, at the moment, the only active party member I've got is my plucky platypus Stephen. And he's here in my outlaw slot.
Terrible name for a platypus.
What would you call him?
Oswald?
Oswald the platypus. Yeah. Very well. Oswald is here in my my outlaw slot. Oswald can go in any slot because he doesn't have a faction allegiance. Good job, Oswald. So if I go ahead and I take this Mystic Hogfolk from the store, I will have to put him here in the Mystic slot. Now, I actually have just done something illegal. Because if the Mystic slot is occupied, I can't just start moving people around willy-nilly. I'm not allowed. When I buy a adventurer from the saloon, he can only go in the active slot, and when that happens, I have to replace whoever's in the active slot. So if I get a second Mystic, I would have to replace this Hogfolk with that Mystic, or put them up here in my inactive character area. And the only time I can sort of rearrange them, bring the inactive characters back into the party, is when I leave town to go adventuring. That's quite important because these icons here, they do come in useful while you're in town. But
I do love the idea, though, that you're basically telling everyone, right, go off for a little bit, we'll meet you at the gate.
Exactly right. It's kind of like, you guys all go and enjoy yourselves while we're in town, except for the ones I keep with me. And then we'll all meet up when we leave. So that's here's an example of a full party board. Now, if I ever get 4 heroes of any one faction, I will immediately acquire the faction chief.
Yes.
However, any missing heroes, like for example, if I've got 3 mystics or 2 mystics, I can make the rest up with the banner tokens here, which I will acquire for doing various things in the world that we haven't...
Totally legitimately acquired.
Totally legitimately acquired. There we go. So
I'll give you 3 just because
great.
You need the 3.
So those I can acquire through various different means. Well, I said before, basically through questing or through trading. And once I've got 4, I can immediately take the Chieftain of the Mystics. And she's worth 5 journey points. Now, if I ever trade one of these in, like they are the most valuable banner, they're worth 7, so maybe I trade them for food or whatever.
Get some coins.
Yeah, exactly. I don't lose the Chieftain. She stays with me she stays with me until the end of the game.
So it's quite, if you were quite clever with how you set this up, you could end up with more than one faction chief, and they become unavailable to all the other players. So
exactly right.
If you knew I was, say, 1 banner away from getting her, and you had the resources to get a banner, or you found one, you just pinned me to the post, and mine are now effectively worth a lot less than they were.
It's also worth noting that these banner tokens actually reduce the cost of your heroes by 1. So if I were to hire this Hogfolk man, having 3 mystic banners, and 3 mystic banners is an awful lot. I don't know how I would have accomplished that, but I wouldn't pay anything for him. This 3 gold would be reduced to 0, and I could just take him out of the saloon, put him in my party for free. Or I could just put him into my inactive character area for free, just maybe to deny Ollie from having him, or for other reasons, maybe to eat him. So the there is a note here on the saloon that you can spend 1 food to cycle the heroes in the saloon, and what that means is that you'll just wipe out all of the heroes in the saloon. They'll all go away, and you'll replace them with 5 new ones from the bag. Note that when they go away, they're not discarded. They're not put back in the hero bag. They're actually discarded to the side of the board here, and they actually remain in a discard pile until the hero bag has been entirely emptied, and then it's cycled.
Yeah, so it's a good way to deny, if there's quite a few heroes there that you know your opponent needs, it's a good way to deny them it. Because they'll have to wait like, for example, say there were 4 mystics there, and Mike has a mystic already, so he's clearly going to be wanting to get the clan chief. Be a good way of getting them out of the game for a while.
Yeah, or maybe I've got 2 mystics in my party, and there's 4 mystics on the board. I can go, well, that's 6 whole mystic heroes. If I clear the board now, Ollie's going to have a really hard time getting mystics, and that almost guarantees me the chief.
Yeah.
So those are ways in which we can sort of mess around with each other. There's also 4 people symbols up here, and these represent the 4 people who could be playing the game with you. And all that means is that players can occupy the saloon, and when they enter, they can choose whether to duel each other. So, dueling, another thing we'll get to in a bit. But in every case, dueling is mandatory, except here where it's optional. And that's what that symbol means.
Because no one wants to go for their favourite drink and be instantly bothered. But occasionally it will happen. And it might even be you that did it.
Here we've got the stables. The stables allow us to hire packbirds and turtles. And the packbirds and the turtles, what do they allow us to do? Well, they've got arrows on them. These arrows represent movement, and they allow us to move around the world with additional movement spaces. Furthermore, they allow us to carry treasure, because treasure is heavy and we can't be bothered carrying it ourselves. So without these guys to help us out, we just can't take any treasure.
I just have this great idea that the turtle is like that big, and I just put like a treasure chest on his back because I'm too lazy to carry it myself.
Exactly right, just thunk, and then I sit on the treasure chest and I'm like, go turtle, go!
Crack the whip.
The turtle costs a gem and the packbird costs a bread. Why is the turtle more expensive? Because the turtle comes with this additional bonus here, indicated by this symbol. And what that means is simply that when you're out in the world, moving around the world costs you heart points. And heart points kind of limit your flexibility when you're moving around the world. They also have a bunch of other uses we'll explain later. But the point of the story is that the less hearts you have to spend moving around, the better. And the turtle helps with that. The next building is the general store. In the general store, you can acquire 1 coin when you enter. You choose to do one of these 2 things. Either you take a coin, which is great. I guess you sold some junk.
Yeah.
Or you can take 4 artifact cards. Now you take the artifact cards in any composition from the 2 piles of basic and advanced cards. So you choose to take maybe 2 basic ones or 2 advanced ones, or all advanced, or whatever. But the point is that you must take them without looking at any of them. So you take all 4 without looking at them, and then once you've got the 4, you can then look at them and decide how many you want to put in your hand and how many you want to discard.
So, we've got an horn bow, which only horn bow even only costs 2 gold, which is very easy to make, and it's a one renown point.
It's 1 combat point, so that'll help you out in the fight.
We've got the flintlock pistol again, so our old friend the pistol. And we've also got the Unearthed Treaty and a rust spot. Rust spot 7?
Rust spot 7. Neat.
So he's quite cool. So because we've not read him yet, gives you a bonus of 2 additional combat points.
So whenever you make a combat check, you'll add 2 to your die roll.
Yep. He's worth 8 renown, which is very damn high. But his cost...
Well, he's worth 8 journey points.
Journey points.
Journey points at the end of the game.
Journey points at the end of the game. But his cost is quite a lot higher. So he costs 1 of the banners.
Now, note that you just have to have the banner. This doesn't include the banners on the heroes. This only includes the banner tokens, which you have to find out in the world or trade for at the town hall.
Yeah. And then there's also 3 gold, 4 gems, and 2 food. I have no idea why a robot would care about food, but maybe the guy
I think it's because you had to eat it while you sort of tried to clean out the gears and get them working again. It's like hard work, man. I'm hungry.
But that one would be very good to have. But yeah, so you'd have... Grab these, decide, I can make them, I can't. If you can't make them, they're in your hand now, so the only way to get rid of them is at the town hall.
Yep. So, you can look at them and decide which ones you want to keep before you add them to your hand.
Yes.
So, that's an important decision to make. Cool.
Yep.
And then there's the farm. And the farm is just simply food. You take food equal to the number of skill in your active party. So this is why it's important, what I was talking about earlier, when the heroes are traded in and out of your
Active
party. For example, Ollie starts with a cat in his active party. His cat, Cog. So if Ollie went to the farm, Ollie would receive 1 food, because Cog has 1 skill symbol here. And skill is a check. It's done much the same as combat. The only real sort of difference between the 2 checks is that, they're performed in exactly the same way. It's very simple. You just roll a die and add your combat or skill value, which is the total number of swords appearing on all of your things, which may be adventures, items, or whatever else you have, or the total number of hands appearing on your heroes or items or whatever. But the real difference is that combat generally applies to scenarios that come up in the game involving conflict, and skill applies to scenarios in the game that come up involving things that you have to do. In this case, you're going to the farm and you've got a farm, and the more skillful your people are at skill stuff, the more food you're going to get out of it. So in this case, the cat is quite good at farming and gets you 1 food.
I always assumed he just went in and stole something for me.
That's entirely possible. Maybe he finds a mouse, brings a mouse.
Ew.
It's alright, you're a robot. You don't actually eat it. We don't want to.
Actually, to be fair, all of my food is for the cat, so that's less bad.
We don't want to know what you use it for.
Lubricant.
Oh, I didn't want to know. So here's the Mystic's hut. And the Mystic's hut is where we get treasure. Basic treasure. So unlike the artifacts, this treasure is a lot less powerful, but we don't need to build it. And we can also get these treasure cards out in the world, typically by adventuring around and moving over treasure symbols. But again, we'll get to that later. First, treasure from the Mystic's Hut. So in order to go to the Mystic's Hut and draw any treasure, we have to have a pack bird or tortoise in our party.
Very important.
Furthermore, that slot needs to be free. So we'll just have a quick look at our party board here. Here is our treasure on the party board. Now, it's worth noting, if you have all 3 treasure slots filled at the end of the game, you get 5 journey points. That's pretty cool. But when you purchase a pack bird, he goes here. When you purchase a tortoise, they also go here. And that activates these slots below, which means you can now put treasure in these slots. If you don't have any slots, you can't draw any treasure cards. If you do already have treasure in your treasure slots, you can't draw any treasure until you get rid of them. And what that means is you don't know what you're going to get. It's going to be random. So I, in this case, got an old journal and a rough map. The rough map increases my movement because of the arrow symbol. That's what that means. And the old journal says when you successfully complete a quest, draw 1 artifact. You may keep or discard it. That's pretty cool, I guess.
But movement is always good as well.
Movement is always good as well. So let's say I don't like the old journal because I've already got a ton of artifacts that I'm not making. If I want to go to the Mystic's Hut and draw another card, before I get to draw any cards, I have to bin this old journal. This will just go into the discard pile somewhere. And then I'll go to the Mystic's Hut. And I'll do what it says here, which is draw 3 and keep 1. So I'll draw 3 cards off the top.
I don't get to see these as well, so...
Ollie doesn't get to see them, but he will get to see what I keep anyway. Well, you get to see them, actually, because I discard them face up.
No, but it means that I can't influence his decision by trying to subtly screw with his head.
So in this case, I decide I'm going to take the coin purse, which I slot into my turtle there, and the other 2 go in this discard pile that I've just created. Boop! So Ollie can see the ones I decided not to take, and he can also see the coin purse here, which says 2 points if you have the most unspent coins at the end of the game. So that's cool. I mean, coins act like a sort of a 3rd tier tiebreaker, I think, for determining the winner at the end. But I think the winner at the end is determined by... Well, it's determined by journey points, but then the tiebreakers are, I think, the most coins and gems left over, and then maybe the most food left over. I can't remember. We'll check it and let you know. But the at the end of the game, I'm going to get 1 journey point for every 2 coins I have. So in this case, I have 3, so I'd get 1. But furthermore, if I had that and Ollie only had 2 coins, I'd get 2 extra points. So that's pretty cool.
That is pretty good. Sorry, I was just looking at the 2 you discarded, and I do love them. The slingshot gave you 1 additional point to your combat, which was almost the same as the gun, but the paints were quite good because it let you swap the banner you've got. It was just, I've got this banner. I'm just going to take some paint and change that.
Yeah, that's great. That's so, like, oh no, I don't like the color of this banner. Quickly, repaint it.
Well, it means you could get the outlaws to get them cheaply and then change them for the mystics if you wanted.
Yeah, that would be great. Actually, you could just go to the general store and change it for the mystics, and then. And this is something we'll get to in a minute. But there's a lot of stuff you can do in this game, moving around the world. Actually, it was very funny. I played this once before, and I got 2 slingshots. Like I was dual wielding slingshots. Don't ask me how that works. Don't ask. There's a lot you can do in the game. And really the most pressing issue is time.
Yes.
Because the game ends when we run out of these camps. And in order to do most of the cool things in the game, we'll need camps. And I'll get into more detail about how the camps work and when you spend them a bit later on. But the thing is, there's never enough camps. And if you want to take the luxury of going to the general store and repainting a banner, then that's great. But it's 1 action you've taken, and that's actually quite a high price to pay. So don't forget.
Yeah, everything comes with a cost.
Yeah,
the things that seem free.
But there are so many things to do and so few actions in which to do them. And any action in which you're not putting down a tent is also notable. So here we've got the mine. Now the mine is somewhere we can go to get some gems and some money if we want to get some while we're still in town and we need a quick buck. And the way the mine works very simply is you go to the mine, you take a tent off of your player board here, and you put it down on the mine here. And when you do that, you gain the rewards shown in the row and the column. So in this case, there's only a coin, so I gain 1 coin. If I were to go into the slot next to it, I would gain gems and a gem and a coin. Now this, you'll notice there are numbers. What do the numbers mean? Well, they actually refer to skill. You can only visit the mine and mine the numbers if you have the correct skill value. So in this case, I couldn't actually do anything because I have no skills at all. Whereas Ollie has a cat who's quite skilled, so he can go to the mine and do the number ones.
My cat has mad skills. Don't ask me how.
When you're placing tents in the mine, it's worth noting that tents can only be placed orthogonally to tents that are already there, which means you can't be placing tents diagonally.
So you could do on the 2 and then decide to go down, but you couldn't go, oh, I would really like that. That would not be
right. You'll also notice that some of the symbols have fires next to them. The fire is the symbol for reputation, and so when you build on those numbers, you gain reputation. And that's not optional. You have to gain it. Similarly, if your reputation's affected in pretty much by anything in the course of the game, but most notably by quests, reputation must be altered. That's not optional. So, that's how you score a quick buck in the mine.
Yep.
And the final thing to explain in the town board, well, 2 final things actually. We'll do jewels first, and then we'll get to the reputation track.
Fair enough. So
a jewel is when you enter the same space as another player, and when you enter the same space as another player, you will be forced to jewel them. And how does that work? Well, you'll roll a dice, and your opponent will roll a dice. You'll add your total number of swords, and then the winner will be the one with a higher number. So Ollie rolled a 5 here, and I rolled a 4. However, I have a sword on my platypus, Oswald.
I love that name stuck.
Yes. So thanks, Oswald. Which means we've drawn. However, defender wins ties. So Ollie's actually won this one. If Ollie wins the duel, I actually have to go away to jail, and I lose my action. I can't visit the building. And I'll go away to jail over here. So this is the advanced board, which says that when you go to jail, you get a free food. Yay! I don't know why, but I guess you get a hot meal in jail. But the other thing is that there's 2 symbols here. What do these mean? Well, when you're beginning a duel, you decide whether to fight honorably or fight dirty. If you fight honorably and you win the duel, you get +1 reputation. If you fight dirty and you win the duel, you get -1 reputation. However, if you're fighting dirty, you count as having an extra sword, so you get to add +1 to your duel roll.
So if Mike had fought dirty and that one had thrown some sand into that guy's eyes, he'd have won.
Exactly right. Or I could have smacked him in the head with my shoe.
Or you could have kicked him between the legs.
Or shanked him with a knife. Sorry.
It got dark quickly.
So that's and if you succeed, then you get to do the actions at the building as normal, in addition to having your reputation adjusted. And if you fail, then you go to jail, you get a food, and you don't get to have your action that turn, and your turn ends. The other thing worth noting is that you can influence these dice rolls using hearts, and we'll explain a bit how hearts influence dice when we get to adventuring and we talk about hearts. In the meantime, let's have a quick look at this reputation tracker. So here's me and Ollie playing as Aim and Greer, and we're here on the 0 reputation spot. As you can see, the reputation symbol is there, the fire, and as we gain reputation, we'll go up the track, and as we lose reputation, we'll go down the track. And at the end of the game, your reputation scores you positive or negative points. Again, this is in the advanced version of the game. In the basic version of the game, actually, the reputation has no points values associated with it. But in this version, you get -1 journey point at the end if your reputation is -3, and -2 if it's -5 or worse.
Yeah.
Similarly, you get... oh, here we go. Fucking treasure card. Damn it. So here we get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as you go up the positive reputation tracker. Note these aren't cumulative, so you'll get either 7 or 5 or 4, depending on how high up the track you get.
And this is where it can be a good idea that if you've got an artifact early in the game that requires you to be quite evil, that you can get those out of the way quickly and then turn yourself around to try to get the positive journey points. Or you could just decide that the -2 is worth it because you're working towards something by the end of the game.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you have an artifact or a piece of treasure that rewards you for being evil. I don't know if that exists. It might not. I just made that up. So, now we've discussed town. That's pretty much everything that's going to happen in the town. So, let's talk about why we're in town buying shit and doing anything at all. Because we're going to go adventuring. And the adventure takes place on this atlas map that you can see here. But the first thing you need to understand before you go adventuring is this player board. So this is the player board, and the player board we've got a packbird and a tortoise already out here that I put down earlier, but actually you don't start with them, so we can get rid of them for now.
They'll be back soon.
They'll be back soon. So at the start of the game, you'll have 14 camps. You'll have your companion animal here, Oswald the platypus, and you'll have your heart tracker up here. This is a handy reminder that shows you that in the world you have 2 basic movement plus any bonus movement you receive from your companion animals or your companion adventurer people or whatever. This shows you that it costs 1 heart to move over a space, and that will make more sense when we talk about the adventure board, and 3 hearts to put down a camp. And these are your tents or camps, and they're very important because when you run out of them, the game ends. So they kind of represent time and you running out of it. And furthermore, as you put them down, some of them have rewards underneath that you will gain the minute you place them. So the first 2 tents have coins underneath. So the minute you place those tents, you'll get a coin. The last one has journey points, 2 of them. So if you place all of your tents during the course of the game, you'll get 2 bonus journey points at the end.
Which is quite important because you don't necessarily finish at the same time as the other player. Because you can, if you're quite openly spending your camps, then you might burn through most of them, and if your opponent's been quite hesitant spending them, they might have more than half of them left. When you've spent your last camp, your opponent then has a turn, and after that, game's over. So
the round is completed. So if I'm the first player and I spent all of my camps, Ollie will get a turn before the round is finished to try and catch up or get any points he missed. But it is worth noting that, for example, putting down a camp in the adventuring world might earn you a whole bunch of gems, whereas putting one down in the mine might just get you 1 gem. But on the other hand, it's much easier to place them in the mine than it is on the adventuring map. So it's really about sort of a return for investment. You only have a certain number, but you can kind of control the speed of the game as well. So as we said before, this is your active party board up here with your slots for the different faction characters, and it's worth noting that as the game progresses, or it's worth noting that you can only have 1 hero from each faction at any given time. What's that? The Titan was hiding under my board. Oh, get to the bottom of it. Okay, so this is our heart tracker here. Now when we leave town, we set this heart tracker equal to the number of hearts represented by our companions. In this case, I've only got Oswald the platypus, so I just get 2 hearts. 2 hearts is not going to get me very far in the adventuring world. As we noted, there's 1 heart to move over an empty space and 3 hearts to build a camp. So with 2, I can't even make a camp, and I can only move over 2 empty spaces, which is not very far at all. So really, I want to hire a few more people before I leave town. But hearts can also be spent to influence dice rolls. For example, if I need to do a combat check, I could roll my dice for combat. Oh, well, a 6, that's pretty good. Wow. But let's say
versus my 3.
But, well, Ollie, we're not dueling, so you wouldn't roll it this time. This would just be me trying to maybe beat a static number. I don't know what it is, because I am doing this in the abstract, but...
True.
I could be trying to beat this bandit, where I need a combat value of 4. Or I could be doing a quest, where I might need a combat value of, an unknown amount. But in this case, I've got a 7, because I've got 1 sword here, plus my 6. If I needed an 8 or a 9, I might spend hearts in order to add those to my check. Anytime I roll a dice, I'm allowed to spend hearts to do that. However, when I run out of hearts, it severely limits my ability to interact with the adventure world, and therefore, I might as well just head back to town. So it's worth...
Oh, you can do that at any point, though. It's a good thing to add.
Exactly right. So if I'm out here in the world, and I wind up spending all of my hearts to get lost in the world, and suddenly I need some more hearts, I can warp back to town immediately, for free.
Apparently your homing sense is very, very good.
I like to think of it like the Hearthstone from World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, bollocks, how'd I get here?
Where the hell am I? Oh, crap, this looks horrible.
Yeah, time to go home. I'm out.
Taxi!
So then you've got a backpack. That's just where you keep all your resources and stuff. It's pretty good. And that's the player board. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. And so when you, that's just where you put down your little animals there, unlocking the treasure symbols below for treasure, which we'll keep there. Note that you can only carry 3 pieces of treasure at any time.
You can lose them though, which
right. We'll get to that a bit later, but well, I mean, you'd only get rid of them, I guess, in a pinch. But if you get rid of one of your pack birds, then you lose the treasure beneath because you can no longer carry it. That would be discarded also.
I like to think the fact that they were still carrying it and you forgot to take it off them. Just as you see them running to the horizon.
We haven't invented pockets, so we just didn't know where to put them when we picked
I'm
the
a
stuff
robot.
up.
I literally have no pockets.
Yeah, but surely you're just a giant pocket. Or is it full of gears and circuitry?
Gears and circuitry. And a little bit of steam pipe.
So let's talk about the adventuring map, which is here. So this is the town of Thorn, and this is the town that we're in. Every map in the game has a different main town, and it's always represented by this heart here. And that shows that when we leave town, our hearts are reset. Note that the hearts aren't added. So for example, when I leave town, I get 2 hearts from Oswald the Platypus. If I go back to town with 2 hearts remaining, and then leave again, I don't get 4, it's reset to 2. So if I only had 1 left, it'd go back up to 2. But it wouldn't get
Wouldn't get you very far.
Yeah, 2 still doesn't get me very far at all. So I've left town and now I've appeared here in the town of Thor, and this allows me to move around the world and start my journey. Now, as we when we set up the game, we'll also put out some of these quest symbols here. And these quest symbols look like this. They're books. Yes, and that means look at the adventure book. And these will go on any of the spaces on the world map with a letter on them. We don't. The game instructs you to put out 7. It says 3 per player plus 1. But so, for example, if we were playing in a 4-player game, we would have 13. But it also says then if you want to play a slightly longer game, just add more. Personally, I quite like doing the quests, and also we found that it was more fun to kind of have more quests than you can really feasibly do. So we thought we'd put out. We thought we'd put out 9 for 2 players, but again, this is sort of something that you can have control over. Similarly, the rules say that if you want to add more camps to your supply, then you can elongate the game that way.
It all depends on what kind of game you want to play. How quickly do you want it to be over, and
how long do you want this particular version to last?
Yeah.
So
I mean, for this example, there are more quests than we'll ever get a chance to do. So ideally, if we did this over again with exactly the same setup, we're not going to have the same experience.
But you can also, if you use fewer quest markers than there are quests on the map, you can. It means that next time you come around, you might have them. That's a trade route. Has to go with the letters. That's what we're looking for. These letters at the top, because these refer to quests in the quest book, which is here. So when you go there and you quest, you'll go into this book and read a quest, and we'll explain that in a bit. But for the meantime, let's look about how movement works, because movement is really very simple. Yeah. When I move from a space to a space, that costs me 1 of those movement points I talked about earlier. So I have 2 by default for being a person, and I get +1 per animal, per pack, bird, or tortoise I have, +1 for any of those arrow symbols that appear on my companions. So I can move around the world up to those number of spaces on every turn. Every time I move over an empty space, come here. Every time I move over an empty space, like for example this one here, I have to pay a heart. And that's one way in which you can lose hearts, and that's why they're important, because you need them to move around the world like that. So I'd pay a heart to do that. However, if I have a turtle, I can do that for free. Once per movement, I can ignore 1 heart that I would spend. Similarly, if someone stopped off to build a camp here, and I moved over their camp, I would not have to pay a heart for that, because it's not an empty space. It's now occupied by a camp. And that can be anyone's camp. It doesn't have to be my camp.
So for larger player games, you can actually find that a lot of the board starts to become fairly safe.
Exactly. You can explore the board a lot more effectively with 4 players than with 2. But that's okay, because it gives a nice sort of sense of grandeur to these maps.
And also there's a sense of danger, because there's fewer people exploring it, so of course it's more lawless.
So my adventure turn ends when I get to a space that I want to stop in. So here I've decided to stop at this building here, which is C, and it's got a quest icon. So when I enter this space, I can immediately decide whether or not I want to do that quest. I would probably want to do it, but you might not want to.
For whatever reason.
For whatever reason. And if I decide to do the quest, that's when we'll go into the quest book and resolve that. Regardless of whether I do the quest or not, I can then pay 3 hearts, like we saw on my player board there, 3 hearts to put down a camp. When I put down a camp on a space like that, I make it safe, and furthermore, for people to travel over, it sort of counts as explored. I also look at the symbol here. The symbols are either coins or gemstones, and I look at the number of search icons on my party. Remember, we talked about those earlier. They're the eyeballs under the heart there. And I gain 1 of those resources per search symbol that appears in my active party. So in this case, 1 coin. Thanks, Oswald.
It's important as well that there are artifacts and treasures that can influence this. So you might find that you're rewarded quite a bit for exploring and setting camps down. So you might think, oh, I'll hold off on this. But as well as that, Mike also got an extra coin for using his first camp.
Exactly
so
right.
That first one actually got him 2 coins. So he's now on to 5.
Although chances are I would have spent my camps already in town because, and this is worth noting, you have to spend your first turn of the game
in the town.
Visiting the town. You can't spend your first turn adventuring because it's
not safe out there.
Well, you count as just arriving in town, and you can't then leave town the turn you arrive in town. So, for example, if I decide I've built my camp here and I'm done and I want to return to town, I can then go straight into the town board and do a town action. However, because I've arrived in town this turn, I can't then immediately leave town again to reset my hearts this turn. I would stay in town and I would pick an action to do. Even if I don't want to do anything, I could just go stand at the saloon or go somewhere where I thought Ollie might want to go if I block him. It's entirely probable later on in the game as well that we won't be in town at the same time.
I do like the idea, though, that the game stops you from walking into town going, I don't like the look of this place, and turning around.
So what I'll do is I'll explain the quests last. So what we'll do now is we'll go and have a quick look at trade routes. So there are 4 trade routes in the game. They are, I think, officially called ore, chilies, machine parts, and tea leaves. Maybe these are spices. But what did we call them? Rocks, chilies,
technology, and
pot.
Yeah.
It doesn't really look like that, though, does it?
No, not especially.
Cabbage.
I like the idea that it's very valuable mineral ore, very valuable technology from a bygone
you should
age.
lose reputation for building this trade route. And so the trade routes are represented here on the map by symbols. So, for example, here we can see the ore. Here we can see the cabbage. And
cabbage.
If you build a camp on one of the symbols, you then need to find the other symbol. In this case, it's down here in the underground.
In the below.
If you get both of those, you count as having established the trade route. Hooray! What does that mean? That means at the end of the game, you will achieve 9 journey points. However,
I can spike this if I want to.
if I've only built half of the trade route, and then Ollie comes along and he builds the other half, then we both score 3. In a 2-player game, essentially making the whole thing redundant.
But it's also, it could be used as a way to keep your opponent from grabbing points ahead of you, because it's a difference of 6 points. I mean, that's
absolutely right. It's a big difference. And in a 2-player, I mean, in a 3 or 4-player game, then those 3 points still give you an advantage over the players that didn't get involved. And there are 4, as we said, there's 4 trade routes on the map for you to complete in that manner.
Yes.
Now, I should mention as well, for every camp that you throw down on the board in this way, no matter whether they're here on the trade route spaces or here on the other spaces, but for every tent that appears on the board like this, at the end of the game you gain 1 journey point, straight up. So putting down these camps on the board has an intrinsic value beyond the trade routes and whatever resources you receive.
They also have a secondary effect, because you might have noticed there's, on some of them, these little symbols in between.
Right, let's talk about those now. So there's 2 symbols here on these routes here. So as I'm walking across the road, here is Iam. This is the first one we'll talk about, and that's a threat symbol. So what's a threat symbol? Well, it refers here to the threat deck. And the threat deck is a pre-arranged deck, which goes from bad to worse as we progress through the bottom of the deck.
Much worse.
Where it gets to the Titan who's hiding under my board earlier. So, as this is the first encounter of the game, I'll stop here and I'll draw the top card from the deck, which is this bandit. And we can see here that the bandit has a combat strength of 4 indicated on the bottom of his card. And he's got he's worth 1 journey point. So what happens? Well, if I want to defeat the bandit, I have to make a combat check. So I'll simply roll this dice. I got a 5. That's pretty good. But I'd add 1 from my platypus Oswald, and I would be victorious. If I'd got a 3, I'd have 4 and draw with the bandit. I'd still win. However, if I had a 2, I'd have a 3 and I would be losing. What do I do in this case? Well, either I lose or I decide to spend a heart. If I spend a heart, I add 1. And then I win. Great. If I don't spend a heart and lose, I go back to the space I was on before, and my turn immediately ends. The bandit will go back to the top of the threat deck over there.
Yes. So they don't disappear until someone defeats them.
Exactly right. So what happens when I win? Well, when I win, I can take that bandit card I just defeated, and I can slot it under the top of my board here. I mean, I have to do this. I don't have a choice about it.
No.
So I slot him under the top of my board here. And then I can put, I have to put a camp on him. And that's 1 journey point that I'm going to get at the end of the game.
If you notice, it's not very advisable to take the early ones because there's a lot of lower scoring ones before the later ones, which are worth a lot more.
Right, it doesn't represent a very good investment for your tent.
No. So the first couple of times you're in combat, it's not really going to give you a great investment.
But somebody has to beat them. Well, and that's the other thing. So how do I get around these threats if I don't want to defeat them? Like, maybe I don't want to waste a tent on a bandit. So there are 2 ways to get around it that you can use immediately. Not use immediately. There are 2 ways that I can think of off the top of my head. But there are also treasures that allow you to circumvent them.
Yes.
So there might be treasures that you can discard to avoid dealing with a threat or something like that. But the other way to do it is by...
having a companion with a very specific trait, which we're going to call the sneaky git. Really, it's caution.
Okay, so this is on this card here. While I struggle to find a hero that actually has caution, you can see there's a shield symbol there.
And what that means is that because the party member is quite cautious, they've seen the threat coming and they allow you to bypass it completely. So if you don't want to waste a tent on that 1 scoring bandit, and instead Mike wants me to have to deal with that, he'll have his companion sneak them by. The bandit will be none the wiser. Any luck?
No.
There's got to be at least 1.
No. I can't find any of them. I guess it's quite a rare symbol.
I think the lizard
probably
the most likely to have
Oh,
it.
here's one. She looks like a drow. So there we go. She has a
sword and a shield.
A drow with freckles, eh? That's a bit weird. But yep, so she gives you +1 combat. She's only worth 1 heart, which isn't great, but then she's budget at 1 gold piece. And she gives you caution, which can be good. Again, your movement is restricted not just by these threat icons, but also by your hearts and your movement value in total. And she doesn't give you +1 movement value.
No.
So there we go.
That might be one that it's worth having at the start of the game when it's quite advisable to be careful with your results, but then later on she can become part of the inactive party.
And 1 heart is still a heart, which is, a thing.
Yes.
So the other way to circumvent the threat is actually by sacrificing a pack bird. So you can take a pack bird from your player board, put it back in the stable, and discard any treasure attached to it, and then you can literally just walk over the threat. Note that if you then decide, oh shit, I don't like being here, this place sucks, and you want to go back, you now have to deal with the threat again.
It doesn't go away until
it doesn't go away. Well, the only way to get rid of it is by making the area safe. And the way to make the area safe is by building a camp here, and also on the other side here. This area is now considered explored, and that threat can be passed over totally fine. You don't have to worry about it.
The important thing is they don't have to both be your tents. If I put one down there as well, that would count as it being cleared.
Exactly right. It doesn't matter whose faction the camps are from, so long, or whose hero they belong to, so long as so long as there's 2. There's a lot of ways to sort of get around these threats. So the threats are almost like optional kind of ways to get points as well. If you find yourself with a lot of swords or a high combat value and you want to get to that Broken Titan, again, you're much more likely to get through the threat deck if there's more players.
Yeah,
in a 2-player game, the game is more likely to end before you get there. But as we said before, one of the ways they suggest elongating the game is just adding more camps to your player board here. You have 14. you can actually go up to, well, there's 6 extra per color, but that also represents their non-finite nature. For example, if on my turn, I need 2 camps because it's my last turn, I've got 1 camp left on my player board, and I decide to move up here. I take on a threat. I have to put a camp on that threat. Well, now I've spent all my camps. What am I going to do? Well, I can actually just get some more camps out of the bag and continue to place them. That's the rare case when you would need more than 14 camps.
Usually, though, you'd only do that if you want to make the game longer.
Yeah. So if you want to make it longer, you start with more camps. But camps are... You can go over the 14 camps you have in this game that we're playing with 14, but it's unlikely you will. So this is the other symbol here on the map that happens on the routes, and this is a treasure symbol here. So as I travel across from these 2 areas, I pass over the treasure symbol, and that just means that I can draw a treasure card from the deck. And I can only draw that card if I have a slot on one of my pack birds. I can immediately discard something, but I must discard it before I draw the treasure card. So if I say, well, this slingshot, I can't possibly use both of these at the same time, I'll get rid of one.
Not for lack of trying.
Not for lack of trying, but I get rid of one of the slingshots and draw a new treasure card and just hope it's something I can use more effectively than that.
I mean, if you've got a fairly poor item, I mean, a slingshot only gives you a 1 combat bonus, so it's kind of the lowest tier. So you're almost guaranteed to have something better, but it is still a risk of, are you going to get something worse?
You might get something worse. So who knows?
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, with the same as the bandits, if there's a campsite on either side, it's explored. It's no longer there.
Similarly, if you build a campsite on either side of the treasure symbol, that treasure considers to be claimed, I think is the term they use. We've claimed it. It's mine.
It's been stolen.
So the final thing to talk about is this adventure book. So here we've got adventure number letter P. So if we were to look up adventure P in the book, you can see here on the book what we've got here is the map names at the top. So that's map 2, the Broken Plains. Now this map we've been looking at here is actually map 1, the Glogo Caverns. So we'd turn to this section, we'd find the letter P, which is here. And I would read, if it was my character, Ollie would read this for me, and if it was his character, I'd read it for him. So in this case, Ollie's arrived at the town of P.
The town of P.
And
guess what they export?
And I will start by reading him the adventure text here. At a small village, you meet an animal handler who claims he's tamed a giant snail. Care to ride the beast? He asks with a playful smile. He needs exercise. Then what I'll do is I'll read Ollie the bold text, dark text at the top of his 2 options. I'll say, Skill 5, decline, but barter for some small game. Or Skill 7, ride the giant snail.
I think we all know what I'm going to do. I'm going to ride the giant snail.
So Ollie would then do a skill check, which means he'd roll 1 die and add his skill value.
Well, my skill value is 1, so I've got to roll a 6.
Your skill value is 0.
I have a skill. I have a cat.
Oh yeah, that's right. Your cat has a skill in it.
6, come on. 6, come on.
So he got a 3, which gives him a total of 4. But if he wants to still ride the giant snail, he could spend 3 hearts to bump it up to a 7.
If I had 3.
So then, if he failed, I would not read him any more text, and the quest would simply be discarded, and no one could do it again. However, if he succeeded, I would then read him the remainder of the text on the option he chose, which is, the snail, white, while giant in comparison to the common garden variety, is still only about the size of a sheep. As you attempt to approach, it lashes a gooey tentacle at you. After a few more stings from its slimy feelers, you climb aboard. The animal handler and his friends laugh heartily as the creature slips around the pen, and you cradle your burning sores.
Okay, three problems with this.
Okay, but before we talk about the problems, let's talk about your rewards for the burning sores and the snail riding. So Ollie would get, because he achieved a 7, +1 reputation, a green faction banner, and a coin. Now, if Ollie had exceeded the check by 2, he would also gain a bonus coin. But I'd probably just say to him, you get 1 reputation, a green faction, and 2 coins. And almost all of the quests have a bonus for exceeding it by 2. I don't know if there's some with more because I haven't been through the whole book. And that's all I'm going to talk about for now in this adventure book here for this moment, because we're going to discover some of these as we take our own playthrough of the game, and I don't want to spoil the rest for you when you play at home. Suffice to say, there is also, if we turn to the end of the book here, another section, which is this character story section, and you'll see the name of the character here at the top. So this is Vera's story section, and when you would do a quest, instead of looking up the letter or number on the quest tile, you would instead read this quest here, Vera number 1. So this is her introduction, so this is where you find out a bit about her from the character story, and then you get to start by doing her quest. But we're not playing character story mode, and because we don't want to spoil that for you guys. I think that's going to be a great mode. I'm really excited to play it with my friends, and we don't want to spoil that story for you. So we'll let you discover that on your own.
Yes. Now back to that giant snail that had feelers that could.
Slimy feelers.
Slimy feelers of some kind of venom. I'm made of metal. What the hell? That's not a snail.
Well, they're acidic.
Evidently.
Corrosive.
I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, you cradle your burning corrosion.
Yeah, that's not a snail. That's some kind of demon in snail form.
Snail beast. It's also worth noting, I guess, just quickly before we go, that these tents are taken off in order from left to right,
yes,
and then top row first, and then bottom row. Is there anything that we missed, Ollie?
First player token only.
The first player token looks like this, and you decide the first player however you normally decide the first player in your group. I think Ryan says it's the last person who had an adventure, or maybe went to a foreign country, but I can't remember.
You could always just do rock, paper, scissors.
You could do rock, paper, scissors. I'd usually just use Schwazi or hide it in one of my hands and find the token. So that just about covers it for the rules and setup of the game. So we hope you'll come back tomorrow, as Ollie and I are going to decide on a map to play. A lot of people have already played the tutorial map on YouTube, so if you want to see the tutorial map, there's lots of videos of that. If you don't want to have the game spoiled for you, well, you know...
it's going to be kind of hard.
It's going to be kind of hard. But maybe play your own version of the map that we're going to play tomorrow, and then come back.
Yeah.
And see how we did and what decisions we made.
Did we do better than you? Did we do much worse? Because it's a competition.
Is it? Okay. Now I have to do well. So yeah, if you come back tomorrow, we'll decide what map we're going to go on and what kind of adventure we're going to have, and we'll set the board up for that. And we hope that you'll come along with us, because we're really excited to take this adventure. So subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss it, and leave a comment below to let us know if you've got the game and if you've been enjoying it and what your favorite mode is. So we'll see you all tomorrow.
See ya.